tell me whether this is an empathic statement. I know how you feel. I've been there. Do you feel empathy? No. It's not, your words have to match the communication. 85% of the communication is your entire body. So you can be empathic with 2 words. What's up? What's up? Or what's up? Which one was empathic? The second one. So there's no faking empathy. You literally have to feel what it is this child is feeling. Not have quick solutions. No more at least. In other words, I hear you. You are having a really difficult time this morning. And it's the connection that's going to make the difference. We're going to talk more about this. This one, wise feedback, I don't believe was in there the last time I was here. Do you remember wise feedback, old-timers? Okay, wise feedback is getting a lot of press these days. And this is feedback that you give students that voice high expectations and belief that they have the ability to meet it. And so when we're giving our feedback, when I'm meeting with kids, I'm letting them know that I believe in them. The reason I'm giving you this feedback is I have high expectations for all my students, and I know you're just the type of student who's capable of meeting these expectations. I believe in you. That's that connection that's been fueled.
Just before we go away from it, for the student that's extremely empathetic in class, and then they feel the emotions of other kids who are in a sad state, and they will quickly go to their aid, and then also kind of dissipate into that, like directly there. Is there any advice you have for how to help them?
So you have the over-empathic child, and basically it's connected to their own suffering when they are in the presence of other kids who are suffering. That's mindfulness. At that point, the student has to breathe, and I recognize the pain that you are having. I can't solve it, and I just need to regulate my own emotional response. And we do have, not so many, but we have some kids who are overreaders of emotion. I remember once a first grade class I had, and I had one little girl who felt the pain of everybody. And she was a roving sensor of pain. And she would come and tell me how everyone was feeling. You know, Megan's a little upset because she didn't understand that lesson on place-and-value. And she made me crazy. She was overly empathic. But it doesn't happen so much. And in actual fact, what we're teaching kids to do is the middle way. We're teaching them moderation, right? Not too much empathy, not too little empathy. But most of our kids have not experienced empathy. They've experienced sympathy. Ask an adult who was highly abused as a child what they would have benefited from and whether they got it or not. I was talking to a regional special ed director at a legal conference recently, and she was telling me about her horrendous upbringing. Oh my God. Her mother and her dad died, and her mother left for another city in order to try and get some job training. And there was herself and 2 siblings, and no relative wanted them, so they were allowed to sleep on the couch of different relatives 1 week at a time. And they rotated through relatives for 3 years. So that's an unbonded kiddo under severe distress. One of her brothers ended up severely emotionally disturbed. And then one brother had issues, but he survived them. And now she's like the queen of compassion in ED programs. So there are plenty of people who've experienced rugged lives who have managed to rise up and be of benefit to all the kids who've experienced rugged lives. But there's no way that you're going to say, oh, too bad, have a sandwich, like we saw. You have to take this seriously. We have children living unbelievable lives. And don't forget your role as child abuse reporter. You know, you are mandated reporters, every one of them, every one of us. We don't say, I'll tell the administrator and let them decide whether to report. The ball lands in your court when you have potential abuse. Number 6, intermittent, non-contingent reinforcement. Can you believe it? Intermittent means every once in a while. Non-contingent means you didn't do anything to get it. I just suddenly decided to hit you up with it. So the example I like to give is my mom. When I was young, we were in deep poverty, and my mom, very proud, nuts but proud, and she would go shopping sometimes during the day and come back with socks or underwear or a coat or something, and she would put it on one of our beds. And so every day when we came home, what did we do? Go look at the bed. A couple of years ago, I'm 68, so a couple of years ago, I noticed that every time I come back from a business trip, I come into my house and I go stand mindlessly staring at my bed. What is that all about? It's an overlearned behavior. Did I really think my deceased mother was going to bring me underwear and socks? No. It's an overlearned behavior. The most powerful reinforcement is the unexpected reinforcer. You're hitting them up with something. So you can hit up your whole class with a, hey, I've decided that today we're going to celebrate just who we are and the fact that we get to hang out together in this program. So they will be delivering pizza in a few minutes, and we're going to put on our song. We're going to have 20 minutes of something. Hit them up with intermittent, but you also can hit individuals up. So, for example, you've got an attention-seeking kid who normally uses problem behavior to get your attention. Hit them up with attention when they weren't even asking for it. Every once in a while, that's intermittent. Non-contingent, they didn't do something to get it. Allow them to take a break when they're not engaging in a problem behavior. You know, oftentimes kids will engage in problem behaviors. Kristen, you know, you've been doing a lot of math. Why don't you fold it up? I'd like to have you do something else now. She's been dying to get out of math. And she's finally doing it, so our tendency is to keep her doing it, right? But periodically, hit her up with an escape that she never even asked for. That's what the research is saying. There's lots of good examples. Think of it as kids who have attention buckets. Some kids cannot get by with a little bit of attention. They need to have a lot of attention. And so we diminish problem behavior by giving them opportunities to get attention. We give escape from academic tasks that they would love to escape, and they don't have to break out of jail with either dynamite, a screwdriver, or a shovel. We actually just open the door and let them out. Very useful, and it's designed. A productive classroom means that you're well organized, all the kids can see the instruction, and it's a mistake to do all one-on-one instruction. These kids have trouble getting along with their peers, and the solution is not, don't let them ever be with peers. So in actual fact, having kids in pairs is the optimal way of doing it. You may have to have space between the pairs. With our population, lest they reach out and whack each other. But you ask them to turn to their partner. You vary partners. You don't have kids all in isolated little cells. You have them in pairs. And that will teach kids cooperation as well. Pre-correction is focusing on the not yet. So I am going to, when I give kids academic work, I'm going to have a number of easy items and then the harder. And then switch back to easier, switch back to harder. So it's interspersed, it's not masked. So if I'm teaching fractions and I've just taught multiplication, I'm going to give a few multiplication because it's easier, then a couple of fractions, then some multiplication. That's called interspersed rather than mass practice. Use procedural prompt cards. Kids are supposed to write a persuasive essay in high school. They aren't going to remember how to write a persuasive essay, so I give them a cue card of what the steps are, and it's right next to them, and that's pre-correcting for problem behavior. Remember, when you review a procedure for a task, let them know how to signal they need help. Many kids do not want to let you know that they need help. Instead, they just choose a problem behavior. So for older kids, I like to tell them, just stand up your textbook. And that's my cue that I should come by and make sure that everything is going well. Then that way they don't have to raise their hand and do all that embarrassing stuff that kids have to do. So teach them how to ask for help. And focus on process and trying new things. That's consistent with mindset. Remember your incredible 5-point scale. You can use that for pre-correction. Number 9 is teach, model, cue, and reinforce behavior. We don't need to go over this because it's part of our program. Number 10, transitions are well managed. And well managed means I give a signal for a transition. I let them know how long the transition is. We have visual clocks we can use. You know what I mean by a visual clock? We have music we can put on that we gradually turn down as the transition is complete. And periodically reinforce kids for successfully meeting your standard on how long a transition should take. Independent seat work. Can you believe the more independent seat work you have, the lower the rates of engagement and the lower the student achievement will be. Children work best by interaction. We are all social beings. How many of you know the program Kahoot? K-A-H-O-O-T. Kahoot's a computer program that they get to use their little cell phones they're dying to take out, or iPads, or Kindles, or whatever. And take a look at it. You can do a lot of really good teaching using systems other than filling out paper. Filling out paper is from the Pleistocene. Number 12, teacher proximity and mobility. We now know that 40 to 50% of problem behavior evaporates if the teacher will move out of one spot. Because if you teach like the floor's on fire, you are able to keep all of those balls up in the air. Number 13, have a class-wide system, and we automatically have it in our program, so I won't talk about it. Effective goal setting. That's where each child sets their goals on what they plan to achieve. And we have weekly goal setting, and we have longer goal setting with our kids, and we reward individual students and the whole class when we've all met our goals. Number 15 is visual schedule. And I know, Denise, you train on visual schedules sometime. Kids need to be able to see what they've completed and either check it off or move a card to another location. It's very anxiety binding for kids when we have good visual schedules. Effective cueing systems I've been modeling. Do it with me. Class. Yes. I did this one. I did, if you can hear my voice, raise your hand. If you can hear my voice, clap. Those are cueing systems. And when you have good cueing systems, then you don't have to yell at the kids to get their attention. Here's another one that I really love. It's called Stop and Think. Do it with me. Boys and girls, sometimes you find you've made a poor choice, or at least you're questioning whether you're making a good choice. I will give you the opportunity to change, and you won't lose any points at all. you will maintain your 3 points. Because if you respond to a gestural cue, you don't lose any points. So 3 points is you didn't need any prompts or cues, or you only needed a gestural. 2 points is I had to give you a verbal cue. What I need you to do is open your book to page 252. 1 point is I had to do a full teaching interaction, which we're going to talk about. But you complied. 0 is you weren't able to comply in that area. So our whole interval system is related to how much cueing and prompting did you need. So, boys and girls, if you see me do this, it means what? What does this mean? Ask yourself, are you making a good choice right now or a bad choice right now? And then I will say, what do you want to do now? And give you a little think time. I hope you will say, okay, I'm going to make a good choice now. And then what will I say? Pat yourself on the back. That was a good choice. And you don't lose any points. You stay with your 3 points. That's a $2,000 social skills curriculum. That's the meat you just got. There's more to it. If you wish to purchase it, you don't need to. Really, it's a gestural cueing system. The last one is opportunities to respond. If your curriculum looks like that, that's the behavior you're going to get. You're not passing the dead man rule. If dead people could be successful for 10 minutes in your classroom, then you don't have high engagement. So give them lots of opportunity to respond. With choral responding, 2 plus 5 equals, let's try that again. 2 plus 5 equals 7. When there's one right answer, you can do choral responding. When there's multiple answers, you can ask kids to vote, either with little signs or for older kids with fingers. Try not to use the middle one. 1 finger means this, 2 finger means that, 3 finger means that. What do you think? Because any time I've had an opportunity to respond, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be academically engaged. And we have a variety of cueing systems we need to come up with. Raising your hand is vastly overrated. This isn't 1952 anymore. So I like the stick program where you just have, and we've all seen these, where you pull a stick and somebody has to answer something. But I like to color code them because I don't want to ask a student who's a concrete thinker a highly abstract question because they'd be embarrassed to answer it. So I code for who's likely to be able to answer what level on revised Bloom's taxonomy. There's a great little book called The Flip Book in Bloom's Taxonomy. It's like $4.99 or something on Amazon, and it gives you all the question stems that you normally would use in teaching. And I'll have to save some of this for later. So we need to develop an intentional approach to building relationships. We have our PBS, we have specially designed instruction, we have proactive classroom management. Good behavior game, I may need to save for later as well, because I need to get to the points and levels, and we may come back to good behavior game. Okay, let's talk about our points and levels now, which is at the heart of what we're doing, all this record keeping. So we have the interval debriefing points that pay off in honors time. We have the bonus points that pay off in student store. So we're running 2 programs. One is to keep them going, and one is reflective to show them that they achieved. So points are exchanged for access to honors room. If you don't have an honors room, you don't have a location where the kids who haven't earned it can't see and can't hear, your program will fall out of the sky. Because that means you have 2 wings on an airplane, and if you don't have honors room, you're flying around with only 1 wing. How well does that work? Not so well. So those of you who have honors room, raise your hand if you have an actual honors room. Tell us how that's going for you.
It's going really well. It's been somewhat of a challenge to keep up with their expectations, because if you start too high, then they get kind of jaded and they want something more, better. There's people how to get creative with privileges rather than items. You know, especially 3 through 5, the items can get kind of expensive. So, we've taken.
Oh, so now you're talking about token payoff.
Well, I'm talking about just the honor itself. Like
okay.
we had a foosball table. We had a air hockey table. We had a Wii and a PS1 or PS2, and all of that at once, it became
they
problematic.
satiate.
Yeah. So we started taking the things away and then reintroducing them, and all of a sudden it was like Christmas again. So you have to kind of.
You know, this is interesting. I have a new puppy, and my puppy is 5 months old, and she has a lot of toys we've purchased for her. And she'll go around and look at all the toys, and they're all familiar to her, so she's not interested. She'll go choose something that is a forbidden item and run off.
We have noticed that as well. Or they'll fight over this stuff.
So what you're doing in honors time is you're giving them a social laboratory opportunity. So in honors time, they are engaging with another human. And it can be an adult or it can be a child. This is not the time to take out your own cell phone as a para and start texting and checking your social media, because you're clearly communicating to the kid, I don't actually care about hanging out with you. I'm just here to supervise you. So you want to be interacting with them. Some of our kids hate to be interacted with. All they want is to be left alone. So make it a little pain-free by giving them 7 minutes out of 20 of playing Uno or Connect 4 or something with another human, and then they can be released to their headphone. Try not to have Mortal Kombat and other violent games, because what kids will do is they will name all those little icons, different people, and then they will try to kill them. And that's not, we don't want to practice that. That's not the purpose. So the whole point of honors time is social laboratory, but the kids think of it as a reward time. For young children, no more than 20 minutes max at the end of the morning, and no more than 20 minutes max at the end of the day. Why?
They get escalated.
They will start doing bad behavior, and you're still recording interval points while they're in honors time. They're still under pointing conditions. And by the way, how many of your kids are riding a long way on buses? Long bus rides? So make bus riding an interval. And therefore, being safe, respectful, and responsible on the bus, you are gathering from the bus driver anyone who had problems, and doing the 3210 for bus riding. Just make it an interval. The rule is you need 80% of your points to go into honors time when the interval is ready. So if I had 6 intervals with 9 in it, so 6 times 9 is 54. What's 80% of 54? You have to know that. For older kids, I can have them do the calculation, hand them a calculator. For younger kids, they will need to know the number of points. That means they get to access honors time. So have them choose a little plastic animal, and they hop on a number line until they get to the fence. And if they get to hop over the fence, that means they've earned it. But you want them to be doing the evaluation. Does that make sense? So, other comments on honors time and honors room? Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I have middle schoolers 6th through 8th, and we put in stuff like we actually introduced their PlayStation. We have like iPad tablets, and they at first rented them, and we have these giant mats in there as well. That's where they store the wrestling mats, and they were supposed to be rolled up. We got an okay from administration to unroll them. Oh my goodness, middle school boys love to do flips. I mean, it's just what they love, and that's what they end up doing. It's just like playing games, and like, I mean, it was the simplest thing of like literally just mats and they build forts, and they pretend they were tanks, and they were, in these tanks, and they'd explode all the mats everywhere. And I mean, it was destructive and crazy, but it was so.
And it's also the most important thing they could be doing.
Yeah.
Because they're interacting together. I mean, think about the core deficits, following adult directives and getting along with your peers. So
And they would
congratulations
get
on that.
Stuff. They would get in arguments, but it was really basic of like, we're in honors room right now. If you want to argue, then you cannot be in here. And
Yeah, honors
that's not
room is
going
always
on.
the
And then it would just end. Like their arguments were
Yeah.
for the most part.
So the problem with most of us as adults is when we see that kids don't get along with each other, we tend to not let them be with each other. So they don't develop any further skills. Poor programming removes the opportunity to work it out. Good programming gives structure, like you did with awarding the points. Let's give her a round of applause. Very creative. Any other comments on honors room and honors time? Yes.
I think the key to the success of our honors room was that the instructional assistants and myself really enjoyed playing the games and the activities with the students, which was quite obvious, and at the, or at least to me it was obvious at the time. And at the beginning of the year when this was happening, several of the students wanted to stay isolated, and it was actually just me and the staff playing with like a select couple of kids who come over and join us. And then by the end of the period, or at the end of the year, everybody was engaged, involved, the whole class, the whole spectrum. But I really think the key was the instructional assistants really buying in and being a big part of it, a big factor, constantly, not just modeling, but like just really being present, really engaged, really getting better at foosball or not being very good at ping pong, whatever it was something that I saw the kids absorb naturally, and it created just this atmosphere of collaboration and
Thank you. This program doesn't work if your para-educators are not fully, actively engaged and modeling the desired behavior. No teacher can do it on their own. Teachers, are you in agreement with me on that? You cannot do it alone. And therefore, one of the key roles is the para-educator. Because kids know as teachers we're required to be there with them and interact with them and teach them. But somehow they lose track of the fact that para-educators are also employees. And they think you're just there to be with them if you're successful in modeling it. So really get out there and model it. Now, what if I don't have an honors room? What if I only have honors time because our school is over-enrolled or whatever? The rule is the child who didn't get it can't observe or hear it. Because the research out of UC Irvine has shown that if you can see or hear it, you're getting reinforcement. So do everything in your power to make it invisible. You see those little strips up in the ceiling? Those of you in the other room, look up. There are metal strips between each of these little tiles. They have big magnets you can get at fabric store, and you can sew fabric that hangs down that's magnetized up. So you can make all kinds of divisions in your classrooms with magnetized fabric, and if they rip it down, what do? Put it back up again. Really hard to rip fabric. So make sure that you either take away the kids who didn't earn it to go do academics somewhat other location, or you take away the kids who are going to access something in another area. And then you've mastered the idea of honors time. Look at the last point. It says 17 out of 20 days of reaching daily point goal results in a promotion. And the promotion is to weekly status in a three-level program. And at weekly, you are eligible for the weekly community outing. This is not a field trip. What is it not? Field trip. And you can't go if you didn't earn it. And this is your opportunity to go out and do service learning and to go out and do job exploration. If you're going to go to Jack in the Box, at the very least, go figure out have somebody teach the kids how to make French fries. In other words, we're job exploring and we are performing service. And the program in Kearney, Nebraska, the kids get in the van and they figure out who they're going to service in the community. And they go out, they pick up trash, they rake leaves, they leave a little note, service provided by the Skills Academy honors student. And then they also go get food somewhere on the way back. So you don't want to go for more than an hour a week. And by the time you're in high school, it's really hard to get them out because you've got credit and credit recovery issues going on. And so you may have to wait more than 1 week. You may have to go 2 weeks before you go. Try not to go for more than an hour. And you have to arrange transportation, which means either a van, a bus, or permission for the kids to ride in cars. You've got to get district permission for who gets to drive them. And you've got to figure out whether the parent has to sign ahead on where their kid is going or whether you can do the mystery outing. And that will all depend on how your system is set up. Sometimes the teacher is not going to be able to go. Why not? Because there's kids left behind. Sometimes the teacher goes and maybe a para and a supporter is left back for that time period in order to provide coverage. Be fair. We're all a team. Let people change out where they go. Sometimes the supporter, the mental health service provider, is driving the little minivan and the kids are going out. There's nothing worse than taking an acting out kid who's emotionally disturbed out in the community. Have you ever had that experience? I had one once. I'll never forget. I was required to take a bunch of kids to a church service if they wanted to go. There's about 10 of them in the van I'm driving. I'm by myself driving them. And a couple of the little knuckleheads decided that they were going to get Jesus at that moment. And they charged down to the front of the church service that we were at and did a lot of things you don't even want to know about. And there I was. So it is a privilege to go on weekly. But weekly is not just the status of getting to go out in the world, is you get to cash out first in bonus point time in student store. You get first dibs on things. You get selected reinforcers that you don't get if you're not at that level. So you want to structure it up so that weekly has status above daily. And in your classroom, you should have daily, weekly, natural, and what kids are under what level posted. So every kid can see where they are. Bonus points exchange for privileges and tangibles, whereas interval points pay off for honors time. So we understand that? Okay, so you've got your 3 levels. Natural is there's no point card at all that's necessary. They just go through the day, and if they make errors, they flip back 2 point cards. There's a lot more details that those of us who are advanced in this would want to talk about, but we won't have time to do that. So we have 3 levels that they're working on. How do you respond to problem behavior? Let's talk about that. First, your eyes always have to be below the child's eyes when you're doing a correction, which means I have to bend down. If I've got bad knees, go get a stool. I'm going to look up into the child's eyes, and I'm going to be close, but not so close as to intimidate. And I'm going to lead with one leg, meaning I'm leaning forward on one leg. My hands are open. Why are my hands open? Non-threatening. And I am communicating a correction. non-threatening body posture, and you always give kids a way out. Sometimes you can say, what's up? Let's get a drink of water. And that's often the end of the book. So you have to be skilled when there is problem behavior. Shaming, ridiculing, embarrassing, and sarcasm are out. Are we all in agreement? What about sarcasm? Why do I say sarcasm is out?
Everybody's going to get it.
They won't get it, and they'll try and do it back at you, and it won't be pretty. So what we have when kids are acting out, we want to master the prompt system. And this is for kids who engage in socially mediated, purpose-driven behavior. And we'll talk about, next time I'm here, progressive response to problem behavior, or your in-house people will train you on that. So here are the steps. You build a solid foundation in your classroom. You master proximity control. You master redirection, ongoing monitoring, prompting, and then the teaching interaction. So the foundation we've really already talked about. We've talked about communicating effectively. Proximity control is you're not correcting problem behavior, you're just moving over next to the student with the smile on your face. They're reminded of relationship. You pluck them out of deviancy, and now 40% of the classroom problem behaviors in the literature are gone, just with proximity. Redirection is where I give a command to a child who's non-compliant. I say to him, I can't find my coffee cup. Patrick, could you help me look for it? There he is. He wants to be non-compliant, but I've asked him to find my coffee cup. Is he likely to respond? So make a list of all the things you could ask somebody to do. Would you please go next door and ask Mr. Brown if he has the red toolbox? There is no red toolbox, but it's a code word in our school that this kid needed just a brief break. Do not send them to the office. Why? Send them to the office on an errand, wave goodbye as they go. They're not under instructional control, and they're likely to wander off into the sunset. So the other thing is you can ask them to go next door and ask the teacher if she has 6 paper clips. And that's code word for I could care less about paper clips, but go rustle up 6, give it to this child, and bring them back. So if anybody asks for 6 paper clips, that's what you're doing. You could ask them to feed the fish. Be sure you've got a lot of fish if you do that, because they'll get overfed. You could ask them to make a PowerPoint, sharpen pencils, anything. Go ask everyone what was the hardest math problem on the page. They'd love to do that. So that's redirection. And when you use redirection and proximity, 75 to 90% of problem behavior evaporates. But it didn't work. So ongoing monitoring is where I'm bonus pointing everyone around my target kiddo, either when he comes back or as a pre-step. And then that way the student will think, oh, I want to do the right thing because I want to get those bonus points. It didn't work. So now you deliver a direct verbal command. And the verbal command is falling voice tone, one command at a time. You don't ask a question. You don't say, are you going to do any work? Because what's the answer? No. So don't ask it. So I just say, what I need you to do is open your book to page 221. And I step away. It didn't work. So now I'm going into the teaching interaction. The teaching interaction was perfected at Boys Town, and it's why they have the highest recovery rate in the country, according to their researchers. Everyone at Boys Town has mastered this. It prevents escalated behavior. It preserves relationships. So what you do is you start with an empathy statement. So I might say, Lisa, I know that you find this subject area boring. I've been there. I've had to do boring things too. But right now, you're talking out loud and disrupting everyone around you. What I need you to do, instead of talking out loud, is start working quietly on the assignment. And the reason why I need you to start working on the assignment is that this will allow me to know if you're ready for the assessment and you can move on, or whatever you want to say. And then you deliver a warning or a consequence. I hope you'll make the right choice and keep that 1 point for safe or respectful or responsible, whatever you're dealing with. And then you step away. You deliver feedback and praise if they change their behavior. So you say, thanks a lot, I really appreciate it. If you have a long history of her not changing with teaching interaction, and she does, what do you think of doing? Bonus point. But be careful. You don't want to say, if you do this, I'll give you a bonus point, because then they'll act out in order for you to go through this. They're way better at manipulating than we are. That's why we do behavioral autopsies. So we don't have time to go too much in detail on this, but this is something we have to practice. This is a skill. And I like to remember this as a reinforcement sandwich. Start with empathy. We all love our carbohydrates, the bread on the sandwich. Start with empathy. Then go to the cheesy behavior. That's the inappropriate behavior. Then go to the meat, which is the appropriate behavior. And then go to the rationale, which is like adding spice and lettuce to your sandwich. And then close it up with reinforcement, which is like adding bread. You have to find a way to remember it to be able to do it. But what if Lisa decides that she wants to question me about this? I don't know why we have to do this crummy work. Why do we have to do it? We've already done this, or I hate this. This is not the time to defend your actions. You don't say, oh, well, the reason why we need to do this is this, because they're manipulating you. When that happens, you deliver your second teaching interaction, and then you just simply say to Lisa, right now, what you're doing is questioning what I need you to do. And I understand why you're doing that. So this time I'm delivering inappropriate label combined with empathy. Switch it from empathy inappropriate to label inappropriate, pair it with empathy. What I need you to do is X, and the reason why is Y. So you've got a choice to make. Don't let them drag you down the tunnel. And we give verbal warnings, teaching interaction, and repair will need to be done. Personalized de-escalation, we're going to have to cover the next time we're back, because, and that's for kids with behavioral earthquakes. Let's go now to the reboot system, because you can't go out of here without that. The reboot system with integrated boring time. We know that being bored is one of the most severe punishments that we can apply to a student. Why would I want to punish them? Because all positive with no correction will not be kind, fair, firm, and consistent. Children need limits, and they need to know when they've reached a limit. So remember, a punisher is something we apply that makes them not want to get that again, so they won't do the problem again. So I'm very positive, 5-to-1 positive. I am positive. But when we have reboot, it means we've got a zero-out behavior. A zero-out behavior is a behavior that is totally intolerable that we would normally call the police or administration on. And so the first intolerable is unprovoked physical aggression. What is it?
Unprovoked physical aggression.
And in your signage, you'll see that that's 10 folders. 10 folders are the result of unprovoked aggression. I just suddenly decided to get up and whack Patrick in the face. That's unprovoked aggression. That's 10 folders, typically. Then you have AWOL or elopement or running away, right? Whatever you want to call it for your age level. They trucked off of the campus and they're headed down the highway. When they return, there has to be a consequence, or else you're going to get a lot of trucking down the hallway, right? Trucking off campus. So typically AWOL, elopement, as it's called in the literature, or running away, is a 10 folder as well. If you run on campus, that might be 7 or 8 folders, and it's all in your signage sheet. And that's, I run up and down the hallway, opening and closing doors. So how many of you have ever seen unprovoked physical aggression? How many of you have ever seen elopement off campus? How many of you have ever seen, what was the next one we just did? Elopement on campus. That's the run around, open and close doors, and make a mess out of things. So those are truly egregious behaviors that have to go into reboot. Reboot, where does the term reboot come from? Computer. It's a do-over. But in order to do it over, I have to do some overcorrection. So the other one we put in is sustained noncompliance. And sustained noncompliance is 2 or more intervals. So for young children, that's 30 minutes plus 30 minutes. For older kids, that would be often 2 hours, or 45 and 45. But what about this kid who comes to school? It's Tom. And he doesn't really want to do any work. And he didn't sleep last night. And he puts his head down on the desk, and he goes soundly asleep. He's even snoring. I don't have to call that noncompliance. I can give him a command to sleep. And then, is he complying? Yes. All right. You don't even go down that tunnel. Tom, what I need you to do is take a little snooze here. I don't think you're quite ready to start. But wait a minute. Is that fair? Fair is not everyone getting the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need. And that's a signage you'll need with your kids as well. But let's say I really do need Tom to work and I'm not going to let him snooze. Then I go through the prompt system and he doesn't comply. I step away. What else am I going to do? Drive nails under his fingernails? There's nothing I can do. You can lead the horse to the water, but what? Make him drink. So he's being non-compliant. I step away. If he goes for 2 intervals, sitting in front of work he should be doing and not complying with any commands, then it's a 0 out. A 0 out means you don't earn anything in that interval. No safe, no respectful, no responsible. It's zeroed out because you went 2 intervals with this deep non-compliance. And normally we put that at 6 folders.
So in that situation, would it be used before staff switches where if I'm trying to get someone awake, but I know that they would respond better to Lisa, I might have her go do it? Is that...
It's okay.
Okay, that's okay.
It's a good decision.
Yeah, no, that's something we use a lot.
Yeah, all of us, yeah. But watch out for a concept called splitting. Do you know what splitting is?
That's what
They are kids who have mastered this one. I don't want to work with you. I want to work with this. Young children do that all the time. I don't want mom, I want dad. I don't want dad, I want mom. So watch out for that one.
Yeah.
But if you are losing your own amygdala, and you just can't do this kid, and this kid can read you, then you go to your other staff person, and you say, we have until 4? No, we're going until 3. All right, well then I will circle back on some of these components. I thought I was stuck with the 3 o'clock and I'm on steroids now. Brianna?
I just had a question about the non-compliance for 2 periods. We have time, and it didn't last forever, but we did have time when we had a few students who knew that it had to be 2 full periods. So say that was an hour and 30 minutes. They would go an hour and 20 minutes without working and doing whatever it is they wanted. And then 10 minutes before that 2 periods was up, they would go, oh, we're going to work again. And then after that 2 periods was done, they'd go and do it again. So basically we had an entire day of, I'm only going to do 10 minutes of work when I know I'm about to zero out, but I'm not quite going to zero out.
Okay. Zero out is what throws you into reboot. But meanwhile, they're not earning their points. They may be being safe. They're non-compliant, but they're not violating a safety reason, right? So they would still get their 3 points in that interval for safety at the end of the interval. For respect, depending on how they handle being non-compliant, you may or may not be losing points. And for responsible, you're going to be getting a 0 because I gave you a teaching interaction and you didn't comply. So you're actually impacting your ability to get to honors time. And make sure that your partially non-compliant kids are getting hit up with reinforcement and through bonus points, and the people around them are getting hit up with bonus points, and a number of the kids will peel away and start becoming more compliant. But we want to reserve reboot primarily for physical aggression where the police get called or the administration would get called if this was a gen ed kid. And elopement, which gets the county sheriff and the administration, and a lot of steps on your Fitbit as you truck around chasing them. So you've got a group of kiddos who are manipulating. And so be honest with them. Just say in your self-governance meeting, oh my God, what's happening here? And this is making it hard for me because I'm really dedicated to you all learning as much as possible this year. Do iMessaging. And then use that very famous pronoun system called what can we think of to help us solve our problem? Say it with me. What can we think of to help us solve our problem? When your pronouns are under control, you're asking kids to do something called shared controls, joint controls, and usually kids will problem solve. Well, it's a really dumb assignment. We really shouldn't have to do it. And so what can we think of to help us solve our problem? Here's what I needed you to master. Does anyone have any suggestions on how we can do some skill practice to master this? Don't be undone by them. When all else fails, what do you say? Turn your face around and then communicate honestly where you are. So in zero out, no points are earned in that interval because within that interval there was AWOL or there was physical aggression. But what about the kid who does those little flurries of am I going to do boring, am I going to do this for that? No. Not unless this becomes truly egregious, and then that becomes a personalized zero out because this is so disruptive to the learning of others. And that's when I sit down with Patrick and I tell him, this little flurry of FFFFF is disrupting everyone, and I really need you to stop. And so it will end up for you, and you only, it'll end up with this. Then there are racial and ethnic differences we have in our population. Not so much here, but in a lot of places in the country. And so if you hear the N-word, you can do the N-word about once without ending up in a reboot system. But if I'm going to persist with the N-word, it's going to be personalized. It's intolerable because what it does to the human who's having that happen, or wetback, or any term that references our undocumented folks. So we have some intolerable, but hold up on it. Because if you were to do the reboot process for every verbal losing it, you'd have more kids in reboot and less in the regular classroom. And for some kids, I want to celebrate when they tell me to F off. Why would that be? Because they didn't get me. You know, it's coming down. Now you're using your words. So don't put verbal aggression into your reboot. And it's very clear on your signage document what goes in and what doesn't go in. Yes?
So we had last year in high school a couple of instances where a student made a very clearly specific threat towards a staff person, like, I'm going to hit Rose in face, you know, and so a threat.
Well, here we go. We want to go into threat assessment. So with threats, we have to ask our question, was the child on a path toward violence? Was he truly going to go and harm someone, or was this a kid who was having a little verbal, I want to say verbal diarrhea, but I probably shouldn't say that. So scratch that part. They're having a verbal breakdown, and they don't know how to handle this situation, so they're threatening. If the threat, it's all on the PINT website. There's a whole training on threat assessment. But, and I do this all over the country. If we read the behavior for the emotionally disturbed child as he's doing it because it's a skill deficit, he doesn't know how to handle this situation, he's really angry with his teacher for some perceived or non-actual problem, and I want to sit him down and I want to talk about, we don't tolerate threats because it's scary to everyone. And I'm going to do a corrective procedure on it. And for the first one, I wouldn't do reboot on it unless it was so huge where he talked about the weapons he was going to get, that he was building this bomb, that he was coming to your house at 10 p.m., that he was going to blow up all your children first, pull their arms out of the sockets. Depends on the extent to which the teacher felt threatened. But on the whole, you don't have surprise reboot, right? But if he's done it once, we let him know, okay, we forgive you for this, but it can't happen again. Or it goes into not only reboot, it may go into law enforcement as well, because we don't tolerate threats in our schools. Does that make sense? So try to keep reboot clear. The programs that are not doing well are the ones that are invoking all kinds of minor misdeeds for reboot. So, again, if Tom wants to take a little snooze, let him take a little snooze. Command him to snooze and you don't have non-compliance. And when you're ready to get him to do something and you read the situation, then you start moving into gestural prompts, verbal prompts, etc. Since we're going till 4, let's vote. We can go to 3:45 if I keep going now and not take a break, or we can take a break now and leave, we would leave 10 minutes later. So those that want to press on, it's one finger, let's use the index finger, and those that want to take a break because you just got to do this, it's a 2. And we have enough people who need to use the restroom. We're taking a 7-minute break, so we'll be back at 3 o'clock. And I'll try my best to get. Sorry, announcement.